welcome everyone. I am not going to do a full introduction to this panel. I'm going to introduce the panel moderator and then hand it over to him to go from there. Now, not everybody knows his name, but they sometimes know his face from Punters Politics. We have Conrad, who is from Punters Politics. And if you haven't heard of Punters Politics, I'd definitely look you up on social media. Now, I follow you on Instagram, and I should have done this research before, but here we are. Instagram, where else can people find you? Facebook? Is it Instagram and Facebook? Everything. And the website, and the podcast, and even doubt, just Google it and you'll find it. Now, what I really love about Conrad's work is that he cuts through the political spin and the corporate influence in a really accessible and engaging way. So those people who seem disengaged or really uninterested may actually want to sit up and listen and go, okay. He's got an interesting past as an economics teacher by trade. So he's got over a decade of experience demystifying complex ideas and extracting the best out of youth. Conrad is a really interesting character. I actually met him in person at a trivia night, which was a lot of fun. And he's here with some really inspiring young people, and there's nothing trivial about what they're doing. In fact, I must say, I've heard all of them, and people often talk about what I'm doing, but what I was doing at their age is nothing compared to what they're doing right now. But I'm going to hand it over to Conrad so we can find out more. Give them a really big welcome to the stage.
I'm here to introduce this inspiring panel. So we'll go from left to right, and I'll give you the impressive bios of these individuals making big changes. Connor Wright. Connor is a proud Larrakia man who holds both a Bachelor's of Science in Chemistry and a Master's of Environment from University of Melbourne. His areas of expertise encompass both climate policy, Indigenous representation. He is deeply passionate about climate change, stemming from both his connections as a proud Larrakia man and from his previous work as a sustainability consultant. Get up for Connor, everybody. Welcome. Now next, I'm having a few kind of teacher flashback moments because Saina Mirpuri here is a Year 9 student. I taught many Year 9 students, and I wonder if I taught as many as impressive as Saina here. She is a student of Hunting Tower School, is a courageous, fun-loving and passionate person who loves travelling, food and music. During the pandemic, she connected online and read to disadvantaged children in her hometown in India through an NGO called Pudiyador. Not bad. Wow. Fostering a connection across borders. Saina believes these opportunities helped her reflect on the values that are important to her and have since become second nature. It's also enabled her to contribute positively in a simple yet impactful manner, whilst making new friends and connections. In 2024, Saina got the opportunity to travel to Kenya, Africa, and work with Stand Up, Shout Out, an NGO focused on youth empowerment, community development, and wildlife conservation, wherein she led the Gen Green project that involved setting up mangrove nurseries in Mombasa, engaging students in a restoration initiative in Mbozoli. This journey left an indelible mark on her, reaffirming her commitment to sustainability and the belief that small actions can lead to significant impacts. I love that. We'll definitely get into that. Next, we have Ellie Hanrahan, holds a Bachelor of Advanced Environmental Science. I love that. Advanced. Not just environmental science, we're doing the advanced kind. Honours in global challenges from Monash University. As the CEO of Global Voices, Ellie leads initiative to elevate the voices of young people in domestic and international decision-making spaces. She works to empower youth and galvanise action on environmental and social justice fronts. Ellie has served as a seasonal bush firefighter, including during the 2019 and 2020 Black Summer. Co-founded Oz Regen, a not-for-profit rehydrating degraded landscapes, supervising landscape restoration research projects, building community resilience projects as a community facilitator, and worked as an advisor to the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action. So practical and academic. That's both threats. And finally, we have the B-Man Clancy Lester. I recognize him from his cartoon avatar, and he looks exactly like it as his Instagram picture. Clancy is an environmental educator and passionate about biodiversity, sustainability, and finding hopeful ways to act on climate. He is the founder of beesandblossoms.oz, which creates native bee hotels from recycled and sustainable materials and runs hands-on workshops that bring people together to learn, share, and make change. Through these projects, Clancy has helped thousands of people discover the joy of native pollinators, while also sparking conversations about how our small actions add up as a collective and needing to work towards the greater goal of calling on changemakers. With a background in pollinator research and a love of storytelling, Clancy works at the intersection of science, culture, and community. As a Wattle Fellow at the University of Melbourne and an ABC trailblazer, Clancy believes that by starting local and celebrating nature, everyone can play a role in building a brighter, more sustainable future. Give it up for our Clancy and the panel, everybody. So, sitting on a panel with people sometimes less than half my age, with resumes such as I have read out, I am very curious to learn a lot about how they see the world and what ignites them and starts it. So to kick off, the question I want to get from all of you first off is what started this first step? What was the motivating factor? I often, since we have a Year 9 student here, I would have normally said, what's like the gateway drug that got you started and clearly keep going to do such impressive things? Who should we start with?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Hello? Yeah, g'day everyone. I would say it's a mix of combination of things. So I started off, coming down to Melbourne from Darwin. I was a Darwin kid who grew up, very luckily on country for 17 years. Proud Larrakia man. And so I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I did chemistry, as you pointed out in the bio. And that was really from a lack of direction. But I always had something within me from growing up on country, growing up with my grandmother, growing up, with my culture where, we are stewards of the landscape that we come from. Where, Larrakia mob, we look after the land because it's not just, something that should be done, but it's an obligation that we have from both our ancestors and things that, when you look after the land, it looks after you. I then moved in after doing my bachelor's to work as an environmental consultant, and I think that really hit my tipping point for me because what I was doing was I was essentially doing auditing for these big oil and gas giants, so I think you would call them cartels.
Yeah, Australia's biggest bludgers, good on you.
Yep. And I was getting their numbers from them directly to me, and I was seeing them firsthand, these huge, huge amounts of CO2 that are legally being able to be put into our atmosphere, and just essentially what they were getting away with in real time, getting paid to do it, couldn't do anything about it though. And yeah, that set me over the edge, essentially, where I was like, I need to get out of this. And
was that like an emotion? Was there an anger? Was there something attached to that? Like
there was many emotions. Resentment, anger, especially, and like unfortunately a little bit towards my workplace and some of my colleagues, because I was sort of like, you're seeing this shit, like you're looking at it like I'm looking at it, but you're not as upset as I am for some reason. So that was tipping me over a little bit as well. And then even just sitting in meetings with some of these people, I was like, oh God, like even talking to you, I was like, please, like I don't want to listen to this.
Seeing the machine, being part of the machine, you're seeing the inner workings, and it really pushed you into the direction you're headed.
Yeah, I was the cog that like popped off. And then so, I came back to the University of Melbourne and I decided to do a Master of Environment to learn a lot more about what I could do, and especially focusing on policy. Because it was the auditing that I was doing where I was seeing the numbers, but all the numbers were within the legal frameworks that we were given in our country. So I was like, well, these frameworks need to change. I need to learn the mechanisms. How are these created? What's led to all of these things happening to where these big companies are able to just produce and produce and not get any like repercussions.
So it sounds like the tipping point was being part of the machine, and then education was the thing that you sought out first. You went, I need to understand this more, and that pushed you.
Yeah. I was in a position where I was like, maybe I don't know what I don't know. So I'm going to try and get the little bit more of a lay of the land, and then I can kind of sort out what I want to do. Yeah.
Saina, what was probably give me a timeline of when you started to head in the direction that you quickly picked up speed within.
So, timeline, that's a good question. I actually think it started in the COVID-19 lockdown. So, I was really bored, disconnected from my surroundings, as I'm sure many of us were. And a friend reached out and asked if I wanted to help teach English to a group of Indian children. I was like, wow, this is a cool opportunity. Why not? So I hopped on the call, and it was around 24 3 to 8-year-olds. I started off voicing over a story in English, and they started picking up simple English words like cat, dog, fast and slow. And despite being 9,800 kilometers apart, facing language barriers as I could only speak English and they Tamil, it was like a surprise to know that we could connect through Baby Shark, worldwide song. So that was a cool moment. And in 2022, I got to travel to India and visit them. So it was a surprise, and they all came running up and they hugged me, and they called me Akka, which is big sister Tamil. And that was a really wholesome moment for me, having all these kids come up and meeting my friends after a year. So that friendship was cemented, and though I had gone to make an impact, I felt a greater impact on myself. And then shortly after this, an opportunity came knocking on my door. A friend from an environmental organisation called Cat Kids, which is for education for climate change for youth, and they asked to help promote their upcoming campaign, which was called Race to Zero. So it's where children had to write a short paragraph about what they wanted to see zero of in the world. I was like, again, another really cool opportunity, why not? So I shared it with my Year 5 classroom, and I said, guys, let's all fill in these forms. And what surprised me is that everyone had an opinion, and everyone had something to say. So I collected these forms, and these 10-year-olds knew about world issues. Deforestation, production of cling wrap, plastic in our oceans. And I was like, wow, we are educated, we know a lot. So I mailed these letters to Cat Kids, who then mailed them to Glasgow. And they were put on the big screen in front of world leaders at COP26, which is an environmental forum for world leaders. And when I got the news, I was like, wow, not only did this show that, these 10-year-olds in Melbourne actually cared, it sparked conversation. So then I shared this in my classroom. Again, it was so exciting. We were like, wow, our opinions have been heard. So then, upon reflection, I'd say my tipping point was that realization that only it takes one individual to create change. You don't need to wait for a whole lot of people, but that one person raising awareness can actually do a lot. So yeah, I would say that's my tipping point. Yeah.
Yeah, you really clearly show with that timeline to the tipping point where you have one yes action that you saw the impact, and then the dominoes started to fall. That's really cool. Ellie, how does your journey begin to the point where you start to tip into moving in the direction of making stuff happen?
Well, very quickly after high school, actually, I'd deferred university. I was doing a film degree. I don't know why.
Gap year? Was it a gap year? Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was a
Mandatory Australian holiday, the gap year.
pretend gap year, yeah. And I found myself on the Oak Tree Foundation, which is a youth organisation. They ran these road trips to end poverty. So it was a bunch of under 25-year-olds. They piled us all onto buses and took us down to Canberra, and I was about 17 at the time. And the whole point was to talk to MPs about increasing our foreign aid budget. The budget had slipped. We were one of the lowest OECD countries. And we were going around talking to all of these towns on the way down. I was living in Brisbane at the time, about, well, we've got all of these really poor countries overseas, Western extractive industries are coming in, they're completely decimating the environment. People can't farm, they can't fish, they can't do what they were going to do, live their lives normally. We need to give them all this money to help them. And I was kind of like, well, yeah, but isn't that kind of a Band-Aid issue? Like, sure, we can give foreign aid, but shouldn't someone be doing something about all these environmental issues? Like, why is that happening? That sounds awful. And it was kind of that thing where I was like, well, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I'm certainly not going to go back and do a film degree. So I went back and enrolled in environmental science, and that took me on the wildest journey, which somehow ended up with me on a fire line in the 2019-2020 season. We were on 24-hour shifts, 7 days on, 3 days off, pretty much called Benambra my home for 3 months. And I stood atop a ridge line. It was pristine temperate rainforest. It's incredibly rare. There's only some swathes of it still left in Victoria, old growth forest, never burnt. And I watched the whole thing just roar up the hill towards us. We all bailed. The next day we came back, it was just completely gone. It was 100-year-old forests. And I'd been, I just graduated university. One of the questions on one of the tests that I remember very clearly is, what is the key characteristic of a rainforest? And I knew the answer. The answer was that a rainforest does not burn. And then all of a sudden, a few months later, I find myself in complete, objectively the opposite of what I was seeing. And so that, I'd been a climate activist, and I was like, there is just something so wrong on the ground here. And that's how I started OzRegen, looking at how to, regenerate degraded landscapes. So that's probably a big tipping point for me.
I'm picking up the patterns of, there is like the education piece that I think is clearly so important, but then there is this personal experience of being on the ground that can't be communicated in a university or a textbook or a school classroom. There is that on the ground tangible thing that I think seems to be pushing all of you in that direction, obviously to get more information, but then do the practical things. B-Man Clancy, where does your journey begin and what pushes you into doing practical things?
Yeah, how's it going, everyone? I'd just like to give a quick shout out to the Zero Waste Festival. I love it already today. And a quick shout out to the interpreters as well. Can I say, what is B-Man? B, and then man. I want to see that today. If anyone comes up to talk to me, say, hey, B-Man in sign language. That's pretty cool. What it all started with, and I also I love the resumes or the introductions and stuff, but that doesn't really mean much to me. That's just like stuff that I've done, stuff that we've done. But what we all have is we all have like this passion and like the wanting to see change and being able to fight for that. So people sitting in the audience or, talking to young people, like we're just people. We've done things, but we have passion, and if you have the passion, that's what's gonna create change and what's gonna facilitate it. So where it all started for me, Conrad, was probably just way back. I grew up like obsessed with watching if anyone remembers, like you would get the newspaper, the Herald Sun or whatever, and it would have a National Geographic CD, like you would get a documentary with your newspaper. I used to look forward to Dad bringing home the paper so I could watch the latest National Geographic documentary or David Attenborough, and just grew up obsessed with nature. And I was always outside filling me pockets with bugs and lizards and frogs and that stuff, like bringing it back to mum and freaking her out, like go put it back. And just loved nature, still do. And that's just how I've always been, loved being outdoors. And seeing how awesome the environment is, and that's always been special to me. And that's one thing I've loved learning, especially in more recent years, about Indigenous knowledge and the connection to country, and getting those First Nations perspectives on how we can look after it, because they're the OG caretakers of our lands and know so much, and we need to use.
And man, if you've ever taught a high school class, oh, like Saina is not your typical year 9 student. Which, tell me about your experience going to another country. Like, how do you feel that you see the world in relation to maybe some of the people in your class, having had your experience, having taken those steps? Like, has your worldview kind of shifted, or like, do you have a greater imagination of other perspectives and other worldviews that exist simultaneously that I feel, from my teacher perspective, a lot of students haven't yet experienced or haven't yet developed? Has that been a strong development point for the way you see the world?
Yeah, going to a different country completely changed my perspective of the way I see things. I would say it started also when I went to Kenya, and I worked with Stand Up Shout Out, and I was part of a committee organising a tree planting day, and we desperately needed volunteers, and we needed around 50, and I was like, wow, 50 people coming to help us, there's no way. And actually, as soon as the applications opened, we got 118 youth volunteers, all from the ages 18 to 28. 118 people came along. And ultimately, it made the day a huge success because they brought the spirit, the engagement, ideas. And with all the music, dance, and teamwork, it felt like a party. We had so much fun on that day, while also just taking care of our part of the world. And that was super exciting. And then when I got home, I was like, that experience fostered like a sense of kindness and empathy in myself. And I hope to drive that in Australia's youth. So whenever I see, my classmates or my friends, sometimes it's just dragging them along. And I'm like, I gained all this, you can too. And I know it will be just as beneficial to them. So just like even today, one of my friends is coming out and volunteering at the festival. And so yeah, it definitely changed my perspective in a lot of ways. It helped me grow in a lot of ways. And yeah.
Ellie, you strike me as someone who, did you find that first step difficult? You strike me as someone who I'm like, Ellie's probably CEO of a million things. Was that first step to take those, was that hard or?
Look, I guess kind of in a counter argument to what Connor said, the first step is hard, just do it. Who cares? Who cares?
I feel yep, good, excellent.
Apply, submit your application. Some people they come to me and they're like, I don't know if I should. I'm like, what are you talking about? Just submit the application.
It's not as hard
What
as
are you
you
going to
think.
lose? If you don't submit the application, you're going to be in exactly the same place as if you just got told no. It's literally nothing. And I always find yeah, you can start small, but you're going to fail. It's guaranteed. Just fail big. Try something big. I know that it looks really it looks very impressive. CEO still really doesn't suit me very well, and I'll be glad to shed that title. But it doesn't show all of the random stuff that I did in the lead up to this. I ran a fairy party business for kids, parties, and I ran a clothing an online store for a while, and and it's not actually that hard. A lot of the things are admin, and then once you start to go through the admin steps, you're already kind of started, and you may as well just see it through. So apply for the degree, apply for, the fellowship or the scholarship, or apply for that job, or get a bunch of people together and go on the ASIC website and start a business and make yourselves all directors. It's actually not that hard to do. And I feel like there's a little bit of fake it till you make it in there, and then you just tell people you're doing something, you've got a little bit of pressure on you, and then you kind of have to try at least. And then, well, we already filled out the paperwork, and now we have a document that cost us $60. It says we have a business name, and then, we may as well do an event, and the event went really well, so now we're going to just keep going, and all of a sudden, you're doing something. So I don't think it has to be scary. And if you only get to step 1 or step 2, and you go, you know what? I don't like this, it's not a vibe, I'm gonna stop. It's not giving up, because you're gonna take all of that knowledge. There's stuff that I use in Global Voices every single day that, I learned from setting up Oz Regen, which is no longer a not-for-profit and, doesn't do projects anymore, but all of that stuff that I learned, I get to carry that with me my whole life and keep building on that. So you may as well start today and start learning those lessons now, because eventually you're going to crack it.
Yeah, thanks for breaking that down, because when we look at the titles and the accomplishments and the things that people are doing, like I said at the beginning, I'm so intimidated, I like you breaking it down with that one step. And then when you're at that step, you look at the mountain, you're like, I don't know how to get up there, it's too big. But you're like, I'll just step there, and then I'll step there, and then as I'm hearing from everyone, it's the path reveals itself as you go, but you have to just do the first step. And apparently, it's not that hard, just do it. It's as simple as it is. B-Man Clancy,
Yep.
you seem like a very practical bloke. I was outside with you. One of these blokes that I just feel like you just get stuff done. You're just out there, and you're like, if something needs to be done, you're the man getting it done. I want advice from you, as a not practical person. Give me some tips on how you just take the steps at taking the idea and turning it into a reality. What advice would you give people in that beginning stages?
Well, I'd first of all probably listen to what Ali said and just do it. Just start today. That's probably step 1 half the time. But I sort of grew up in and with what I do now with social media and talks, and I'm a country Victorian bloke that goes to the gym and plays footy, but I'm also love bugs and flowers, and I'm vegetarian, and I don't fit that. When I sit in the pub and the people are like, what's going on here? That sort of thing, and that's one of the things that probably even held me back a little bit. And having
the perception of people of you held you back a bit, or
going back home and sitting in the pub or at the footy club and talking to the people, what regional Australia is like. But then when I just sort of lost that fear, that's when everything started happening. When the side quests that I could pop up and say yes to, and when things started falling into place, was when I just was like, yeah, who cares? Just yes, let's do it. Why not? Just go after it. Post that video online, send that email, whatever.
So you found it helpful to kind of leave your immediate surroundings even a little bit on these little side quests, and that helped you build some momentum. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and the imposter syndrome, tall poppy syndrome, the fear of rejection, all that sort of stuff that sort of holds you back. Just whenever you forget about that and just go after it, that's when it all starts clicking for you, I reckon. And an example, our mate David Pocock, this senator he's a politician in the big house in Canberra, and when I went to Parliament last year, or when I was going to Parliament, a few days before I went, I just sent him an email. This is going to be an example for just getting after it, or just who cares sort of stuff. I sent him an email, or it goes to his office. Obviously, he doesn't check his own emails. And I was like, David, what's going on? I'm going to be in Canberra in a couple of days. Let's catch up. And his office was send me an email back a few days later, and they're like, just so you know for future, that's not how you reach out to a senator or a politician. But despite there being 300 requests for meetings and a full schedule, he said, come and see him, have a chat for half an hour. And that's how it all happens. And just that sort of attitude, just doing that. Start adding those professors or bosses on LinkedIn and start reacting to their stuff, commenting on their stuff. Any sort of way to get your foot in the door. Follow us or send us messages. We're people. We're gonna, if we've got the time of day, we'll get back to you and get around you. It's just that easy, really.
Yeah, the more sort of lines you drop in the water, some are simple, some are easy little steps that you take to go, oh, I'll shoot a DM. They probably won't see it. I've actually done that a lot. I just shoot random people DMs, and I'm just thinking, maybe. And then all of a sudden, Pocock sees the email. Now you're chatting to David Pocock, you're having a conversation, and it wouldn't have happened if you just didn't do it and just shoot it away. Yeah, I like that. Very practical step forward. Now, you've kind of touched on a little bit what I see in the space of trying new things, doing new things, especially in the Australian culture. My personal experience is that growing up in a smaller town from Newcastle, the people you grow up with and the culture that you're around, if you're thinking a little bit differently, if you're trying something new, if you're challenging the status quo a little bit, my experience has always been there is a culture in Australia that's a little bit like, yeah, but I mean, really, you're going to solve climate change? Really? Like, Australia's only like a small, like, come on. Like, it's not malicious, but it is a little bit, I don't know if anyone else has experienced that. I'm seeing not everyone's like, yes, I'm from Australia, I know, yes. It's that tall poppy thing. So I want to explore what your experience has been like with that, if you've experienced it, and what your response was or how you kind of dealt with that if you did experience it.
Well, I would say my whole story is very similar to Clancy in that, like, I am from Darwin, I'm not from Melbourne, and I've come down to Melbourne to study. So I obviously would go back home, visit family, I would see old friends, I would interact with people who I, used to hang out with in high school, I used to interact with then, see people at the bars or the pubs and stuff that, I've always been around Darwin, small town sort of vibes up there, even though it's a capital city. And yeah, they're sort of just like, oh, what are you doing? Like, who cares? They got that attitude of, well, if I can't, it's all too big for me and, why would you try? And I think, yeah, stepping out of that environment, like coming to Melbourne or even just like being able to sort of step away from that sort of like continuous environment of like, oh, don't bother, or like, oh, it's too hard, or like, just do this and it'll be easy for the rest of your life, blah, blah, blah. When you step away and then you come back, it all starts getting a little bit clearer, where you sort of see this attitude for what it is, and it's fear. Like, these people are scared. And, I was scared too, and I'm still scared sometimes. And I think, you just have to realize that a lot of people agree with what you're saying. Like, I haven't met too many people in my life who have been like, oh, climate change, like, oh, why would you even try, blah, blah, blah. Like, there are people like that exist. But when you, like, talk to people in your personal life and people that maybe you used to, like, know in high school or, like, earlier in life and stuff, like, when you get down to the base of it, like, being like, oh, these big multinational companies who, don't take any accountability, or, they're sort of screwing us over, who are, just trying to live our lives, they're like, yeah, no, you're right. But there's a sort of like framework within the Australian like zeitgeist and mind that, these big things are not for the smaller Australian. And I think, by coming back, and then I think it's useful to come back and talk to these people who have this sort of attitude to be like, no, we can do something, mate. Like, we're, you and me, it's not just you anymore, I'm here with you as well. And it's that sort of camaraderie that you can foster and help.
But you had to sort of step outside.
You have to
like
step
Clancy
outside.
was talking about to
yeah.
give yourself a bit of breathing room or a bit of space to...
Because I think the culture feeds on itself. There's tall poppy culture and the way that people are sort of like, oh, why are you trying so hard? When everyone's doing that, it's so hard to break out of that. So you have to step out first.
Place yourself in another scenario. Yeah, there's some agreement, I think, with that, yeah. Saina, so young, don't let me put on an experience of an Australian culture that maybe you're not experienced. Have you experienced the stuff that's being described about a resistance to doing things? Or how have you found your journey in your generation towards taking practical steps of action?
Well, I would say, again, agreeing with Connor, stepping outside was really important for me. So when I first floated the idea about me going to Africa in my school, while my teachers were supportive, I was getting a little bit judged upon by my peers. Yeah. So tall poppy syndrome was quite high there, and it wasn't easy for me to, tell my friends, can you help donate some money? I want to go to Africa, and I want this money to go for a good cause. So there was a lot of judgment from my friends, and even just my classmates in general. So I was like, is this something I even want to do? Why am I doing this? And there was a lot of judgment, and I was surrounded by a bit of negativity in my school. But when I actually went to Africa, and I saw the team I was with, and they were so passionate about what they were doing. They had the same mindset like me, very goal-driven, had big hopes. And also when we went to one of the rural communities, we met Wasini Women's Group. So they do mangrove planting, and they restore the ecosystem that had been destroyed, because mangroves in that area, if they're taken illegally, they can be sold for a lot of money because of the fibers. So this women's group, because of the biodiversity that needed the mangroves, they were trying to restore the mangroves. So we took the funds and we gave it to a Sydney women's group. And when I went there, they were so passionate, and they were stepping in the mud without any protection, because they didn't have the money to buy protection. So we donated gumboots, gloves, shovels, and things they might need. And they were so happy, and they kept striving. So the fact that if they could keep striving when they had literally barely nothing, I could keep striving as well. So their motivation, their goals, was just so inspiring to see. And when I came back, after removing myself from that community, when I came back, I was like, even if people are judging me, I really don't care. I know what I'm doing. I'm happy with what I'm doing, and I'm passionate. So that's what keeps me going. And even if people are like, oh, you're not going to do anything, I know when I went there, I felt like I did something. It might have been small, but it did something. And I can keep aspiring to do more and more.
The payoff, yeah. It is genuinely inspiring, because I think a lot of people can relate to that almost experience of having a bit of escape velocity as you're trying to leave that kind of town you're in, or those people you're around, and there's that fear that can go, oh, am I just a try-hard, and is it worth it? So good to hear that the payoff is almost instantaneous as you start to get that momentum, and the momentum comes quicker than you think. What advice do we have for has that been your experience, or what would you say to someone going through something like that? We've got leave the area and begin the process, and that will speed that up. Is there anything else that we might want to think about?
I mean, coming from an extremely conservative family,
Politically?
it's fun. Politically, yes.
Yep.
Yeah. It's fun being the black sheep, and I recommend it heavily.
Very punk rock, right?
It is. It's coming back. It's coming back. But I mean, exactly what Saina just said. Once you are around people who are doing something, you kind of just adopt this perspective of who cares? I'm gonna do this. And I just feel like when people don't have a passion and they're not trying in their own lives, I just think it's such a waste. It's so boring. What are you gonna do? You're gonna go down to the pub and play trivia, and that's gonna be the highlight of your whole week. You can go home and play video games. I like to do that. I'm not gonna sit there, at the end of my life and be like, I'm so glad that I played trivia so much. You're going to be proud of those things that you just throw yourself in behind and not care about what everyone else is saying. And maybe that's a very, un-Australian thing to think. And I guess people do have that, but Saina's so right, and so is Connor. Once you start to be around the other people who are doing things, you are sort of in competition with them, and it starts to, you said a gateway drug early on in this panel, and it is kind of that, because you get that positive reinforcement, no, I can do something. And honestly, if you are an Australian you have an incredible amount of leverage and power and influence. And a lot of people who, you know, don't get an outside perspective. I've been so lucky to be able to travel. And, you know, I think of the young people who are in countries that don't have a magic blue passport and can go anywhere. I think of the young people who are in countries who can't write an email to their MP and just get a meeting, you know, within a few days' notice. If you get that privilege, that's not something to take lightly or something to take for granted. And you kind of owe it to the rest of your generation, especially young people, to be that person to do something with those things that you've been given. Because for someone else to start from so far back to get to the point that you've just been handed as being an Australian, you know, you actually can do so much. We live in an amazing democracy. Yes, you know, it's a little bit fraught, and we can talk about that at a different panel. But for the main part, you have such a huge opportunity, and it's honestly sad if you don't grab it. That's how I see it.
Yeah, it sounds like, yeah.
I better get a clap as well, surely. That's 3.
Yeah, I think there is that momentum that builds, because what I'm hearing is that it's hard to start and escape, and there's the fear, and everyone's sort of afraid, and everyone's like, there's the status quo, and everyone sort of experiences that. But then you actually become the gateway out as well for somebody else, because you're that, like, even if you take those one little steps, you're that person that next year, Saina, maybe people are like, hey, that looked awesome, can I? And that momentum starts to build. So as much as the hardest point is that starting point where everyone just thinks, oh, well, nothing can happen. But it sounds like all your experience has been momentum builds, and it builds quick. And the payoff, even if the big goal is such a big monumental task that we all have to come together to fix, those steps is a contagious thing that can keep bringing community together. Clancy, has that been your experience on the way out? You mentioned before you had to, small town, move to Melbourne. How did moving to Melbourne sort of help you in your journey of making changes?
Well, it definitely helped me with my education. I was very lucky to be in Australia and have such awesome education and be able to learn so much. But I also found having that regional upbringing as well has definitely helped me. Like you said, with the practical side of things, like when I do workshops in the city versus, you know, using drills and tools and things, and then I take it to the country and the teachers go, oh yeah, like the kids will be right to use a drill. And I go, oh yeah, how old are they? And they go 9. Like, just like that. That's sort of, so having that sort of like upbringing, being in nature and that sort of stuff, but also with like when I'm talking or when I'm making like, you know, social media stuff or whatever, it sort of is, it also does help having that thing in the back of my mind with like is the quality up to scratch? Like, because if I'm about to click post or send or whatever, and then I think,
What's your thought process when you've done a post, they're all sitting there and you're like, tell me your thought process on you've written something, you're going to post something, what are you thinking, and then what are the steps you take?
Well, I'm just thinking like, you know, is this sound, is this bulletproof? Because, you know, potentially there might be something that I can get a bit of shit for when I go home, or, you know, like getting picked apart by...
Your town is still in the back of your mind that you're thinking of as you're here doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and it definitely has helped me as well. And it's also really supportive, like having those small town vibes, like when I've like done stuff or when I go back and people are like, oh yeah, good luck with that, or like I've seen you doing that, that's awesome. So it's good to have that. And I've also found with like the momentum and like going a bit more bigger picture with, one of the things I love to say is like squeaky wheel gets the grease sort of thing. So, you know, when you have momentum, or if you have a movement or a campaign, like if you're flooding that local MP's inbox with emails, or if you're getting a lot of signatures on a petition, like that's going to lead to something. Or, you know, a few examples on like my side of things with like, you know, pollinators and native plants or trees or whatever. Someone sees like a sign that says this tree is going to get, cut down this beautiful 100-year-old tree, someone will send me a photo and be like, I don't know about this. Then I go, all right, what council is this? Like, let's send some emails, let's speak at the question time in the meeting and save the tree. And, if they think, oh, there's going to be a few people this is going to upset, that tree's going to be saved. And like, who's here from Marybeck? Anyone here from Marybeck Council today? Like, Marybeck's a great example for the small things that everyone can do to contribute to a larger thing. Marybeck's a really green local council because their council said, go nuts on your nature strip, that silly little bit of grass out the front of your house that does nothing. Put some flowers in it, we don't care. We're not going to make you cut it down like some of the other councils will. City of Melbourne. But so, Marybeck, that's great. Like, they've got nature strips that are full of native flowers. They've got university researchers that are doing like pollinator surveys on these nature strips people have built. And this is like drought tolerance, it's, food plants, it's pollinator habitat, all because, we've got collaboration between people doing their little bit in their front garden and local councils and government saying, yep, go for it.
And that's the momentum and the contagion that I guess is the theme I'm hearing across a lot of these things. Which council? Really? Well, maybe we could, and what it was, a group getting together and being squeaky, being the squeaky wheel so that things can sort of happen. Yeah, that's a really good practical explanation as to why, I guess, the idea that it's too big, why bother, is so toxic, because it sounds like it's not as big as you think, and it sounds like it doesn't take as many people as you think it does, and it sounds like Australia, believe me, I think Australia has some political problems, believe it or not, but it does sound like we are so lucky to have a government that still is reasonably functional with a lot of things, and it requires people getting involved. Comparatively, exactly. So I want you all to leave us with some advice. What advice would you give to, I would say, I was going to pick a specific generation, but there's like multiple generations sort of represented here. What advice would you give to people who are here and going like, what should I do? Where should I start? Where should I begin? What's the advice that you would give?
From having our chat, and when you're bringing up the tall poppy syndrome, I was sitting here thinking, and I'm like, it doesn't have to be this way. Like, the sort of like Australian cultural values that we think about can be transformed into such a positive way that isn't just this like, oh mate, like, everything's fine and dandy, like, don't even worry about it, like, I'm so chill and I'm an Australian. But like, if you go back, like years ago, I swear we were transforming it, where with like Steve Irwin, the Australian values of, looking after the beautiful country that we have was really picking up pace. It was really becoming core Australian values. And so the idea of like, even just every Australian deserves like a fair go is like such a core tenet that I feel like every Australian sort of has in the back of their mind. And I feel like everyone here today, I would advise you to challenge the narrative of, if you want to like, help in any sort of social movements, or you want to do anything for your community, or even just want to help out your mates, just have in the back of your mind, like, no, the Australian value isn't to like be so carefree and nothing ever matters. Like, it's about having a fair go. It's about giving everyone a chance, and it's about, that doesn't just stretch to people, that stretches to Australia and the country. The country deserves a fair chance, and we're not getting a fair chance,
Saina.
So my advice that I'd like to leave with you all actually comes from my journey experiences and multiple reflections. And it's that, firstly, language doesn't matter, only intention does. The realization that one individual can drive change, and that immersing yourself in the community is pivotal. So don't wait for the future. We all can start now. We can start small and start with something that you are already naturally interested in or good at. If you have leadership skills, help raise funds for a cause, help with a food drive, or there are so many different causes that we can contribute to. And we don't need to wait for the future or for anyone else to do anything for us. We can start as an individual. I mean, I was able to make a difference to those children in India with just doing 30 minutes a month. That's just 6 hours a year. Who here doesn't have 6 hours a year? So I continue to learn, strive, teach, and I hope that my experiences inspire you to be the change you want to see in the world.
Thank you. Ellie, whatever advice you want to impart.
I'm so inspired by you, Saina. It's just like so well spoken. I honestly can't. I feel like I can't follow that very well. The main thing that I haven't really talked about is volunteering, and that's really your main message. It's, I mean, it's such a two-way benefit, but if you can't think of what to do and it's too hard to start your own thing, oh my gosh, there's a million little not-for-profits that are just crying out for a few hours, and you don't need to, be some big creative genius or anything like that. I mean, if you can put numbers into a spreadsheet or upload photos onto an Instagram, your skills and your talent, just in those two things, is so desperately needed, and the momentum will follow from that. So don't wait for a perfect time, just search something up on your phone after this panel and just hit the expression of interest button, I would like to volunteer with you, what have you guys got going?
Amen.
Well, I reckon everyone here's already ticked off step one. You got your bum on the seat listening to some pretty cool people. You're at a zero waste sustainability festival, so already well on your way. And yeah, challenge the narrative. Just put aside some time for some volunteering or to make some impact. And I reckon just learn and follow your passions, whether it's learning what Indigenous land you're on or touching grass, getting outside, finding something to be passionate about, and then just following that, just kicking the door in, or at least putting your foot in the door one way or another, whether it's sending emails or just getting after it and just go for it.
Our lovely, inspiring panel, everybody. Thank you so much. Good.
And thank you, Conrad. If everyone would give Conrad a clap for moderating this today. Thank you.
On behalf of our festival today, we'd like to thank our panel. If everyone can again stand up and just say thank you. This is our future, and you guys can absolutely step up and have some team leaders and be able to follow them strong. So thank you, each and every one of you. You're absolute inspirations. Thank you.
We are the voices, we are the brave, building a world that we want to save. From every corner we leave our trace, together we change the pace. Changemakers.